The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hello there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André, your podcast host. Big thanks to Uka the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in once again to another episode. Today, we talk with Chris Giarrusso, who I had to look up how to pronounce his last name because I forgot to ask him. But according to the internet, which has never failed me yet, Giarrusso is how you pronounce it. It's an Italian name. And he's a great little creator who worked on the mighty Marvel, the mini Marvels and the Marvel Bulletin, and did the mini Marvel books that came out subsequently in other places as well, the collections. He worked on G-Man, which is like a series of popular books for children, and a lot of other things as well. Officer Clawsome, I believe, is the new one, which is a very cool little project. And a lot of great work coming out of his camp. And we have a great conversation. He's a really cool guy. And, you know, that mini Marvel section in the Marvel Bulletin is something that I fondly remember a lot going through the years as I grew up reading Marvel comics. And, you know, you sometimes forget the people like Chris who are out there doing some amazing work. Even though it's just because it's not on the front page all the time, although he has been doing a lot of alternate covers lately that have been eye-poppingly beautiful. Sometimes there's some unsung heroes in the comic world that are doing some really cool, unique stuff that make the comic experience overall better. And, we need to celebrate those guys. Talking about celebration, today is, as I'm recording this intro, it's August 22nd. As I know, I record them well in advance just because I'm a busy guy and it helps me keep things in order, that I do things and get it out there when they're done. But that means my birthday is actually a couple days away. I'll be turning 39 this year. One more trip around the sun. And it's been going really well. It's been great. This podcast has been a real light. My work has been great. I've been chugging away at all the various things that I do, and I've been having a really good time doing it. And happy with the show, happy with partnerships, with work, with personal life. Everything's going great. So I can't complain. I'm a very happy person. I had a conversation with someone the other day, and we were talking about political kind of stuff, and we're talking a bit about politics. He was a professor of philosophy, rather. He's a professor not professor, but he's a teacher at college, and he teaches, I think it's psychology and other stuff like that. But we were getting to kind of a talk about just different ways to approach life on a philosophical way. I've kind of said that I'm a bit of a stoic, kind of believe that you have to accept what you can change and change what you can, and just go about your life, because that's the only way you can live it, really. And he talked about, which is funny, that, being able to even have discussions like this comes from a place of privilege, because, if your biggest struggle is finding your next meal or trying to pay the bills or anything like that, then you don't have a lot of times to sit and pontificate about the deeper meaning of life or existence. So, I feel as though I'm in a place of privilege where I can expound on philosophical debates. So, hey. But, so happy birthday to me, I guess. But thanks, listeners, for tuning in. I'm really happy doing this show and really glad to have a fan base and keep spreading the word, Subscribe. We are now on YouTube. All the new episodes will now be airing on our YouTube channel, just Graphic Histories Podcast. It's all on there, as well as the interviews we do, the little segments we use to promote the shows are on there too. But now you can actually listen to the podcast right on YouTube, which is exciting. I had to wait a while for that for them to clear me, because it takes a while for them to vet, your YouTube channel and make sure that you're not posting crazy stuff. So it took, close to a year before they, maybe 6 months before it actually got to the point that they could, let me start putting the episodes on. So they're on there now, including this one. So let's just get into it. Here's my chat with creator of Mini Marvels, Chris Giarrusso.
Oh yeah, so pretty sweet. The I share a studio with four other guys, and the whole place is like a toy museum.
I have a little bit of one of those behind me as well. So, oh man, that's a beautiful man. That's a
Yeah,
ridiculous amount of
um,
Transformers.
yeah. The Transformers are here in my private office, and then the walls of the hallway outside are lots more action figures and stuff. Stuff that if it falls down, it won't shatter into a million pieces.
Yeah, I actually just did that. I'm really upset with myself. I was cleaning earlier, and I was trying to fix a shelf, and the board hit a Sergio Aragonés Gru statue I had and broke a piece off it. And I was like, "Oh no! I've had this thing. I've held on to this
Oh,
thing for years. It's like Gru drowning in cheese dip with
uh,
Ruffalo." Man, it was
uh,
yeah. I think I might be able to repair it, but I'm very very sad. The character
yeah.
on the
The
wall.
statues are, yeah.
Oh, the character on the wall beside you, in the bottom by the brush there. Who is that?
Oh,
Is
this is Tote Man. It's a friend of mine's creator owned character.
oh nice. It reminded me of this. Are you familiar with what was the show? Like Bob Newhart had a show back in the day where he played a comic character, like comic writer, or
Yeah,
artist.
was it like Dog Man or
Yeah, or Mad
it was
Dog
some kind of
maybe.
dog, wild dog, maybe
Yeah,
Mad Dog. Yeah,
something like that. And they did a comic kind of to go
yeah.
along with it that Ty Templeton had done. And it just I thought maybe that was that character. I was like, man, that is obscure. But awesome.
It's you actually. It turns out to be even more obscure.
Yeah, that's even better.
I
Uh,
mean, this guy didn't have a TV show.
yeah, sadly, I don't think that one lasted super long either. So, but oh, that's cool. So,
Yet,
yeah, hey, that's the attitude to have. So, where are you calling it from?
I'm in North Carolina.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm never sure when
Yeah,
I'm in Canada, so I'm never sure when people give me their because the time zones it's hard to tell in the States exactly where you were. I kind of assume when
right.
people say east that it's New York, but you cover as much further than that. So
Are you west side of Canada then?
east, Nova Scotia.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right. So there's no. So we're in the same zone.
I'm Atlantic, so I'm actually an hour ahead of you. But
Okay.
yeah, don't worry about it though. It's fine. It's all good. Yeah, very cool. Did
Yeah.
you grow up there?
No, I grew up in New York. I grew up in Syracuse, New York,
Ah,
Liverpool, actually.
oh, really?
Um, but yeah, and then I spent a lot of time. I lived in Queens, New York City for a long time. But
Mhm.
I've been in North Carolina for 7 or 8 years now.
Nice. Was were comics and drawing always a big part of your childhood?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What brought you to
Uh,
it?
I get probably started with cartoons, right? Because the Super Friends were always on uh, cartoons. Superman, Batman. There was a Spider-Man cartoon. I remember even the old like Marvel's cartoons from the '60s were always rerun,
Hmm.
and I just thought that stuff was awesome. And then I was a big comic strip fan also,
Mm.
and we would get to, just reading the funnies every single day. And my brother was into all that stuff, so I would just copy him, my older brother, and he would draw, so I would copy him, and okay, that we're doing this now. Okay, cool. So I just kind of followed his footsteps, along the path of comic books and cartoons and everything that I'm doing now.
Did your brother do stuff like that as well? Did he go into that, or did he go a different way?
He's in graphic design,
Ah, that's what I do.
and yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, but
He
yeah,
went
he's also,
he went the more
I
commercially viable route.
yeah, he makes more money than I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Does he still have a reverence for it? Like, is he into it as well? Like, does he read comics still, or is he kind of left that behind?
Well, see, he was more of like a Mad Magazine guy,
Mm,
and then I kind of went more superhero stuff. So I think at this point, he's only interested in the comics that I write,
yeah. Well, that's nice.
which is
That's
cool. Yeah,
yeah, that's very cool. The
yeah,
Super Friends was always one I was enamored with as a kid because it was like a really ridiculous. Like I just would catch reruns. And even like a lot of reruns of the old Spider-Man stuff. And in Canada, we have YTV, and they would often re-show those the old Fantastic Four, the old Hulk one, the Spider-Man one. And as someone who always had a big reference for Spider-Man, the Spider-Man one I would watch all the time. And going back at it, it's crazy, like by modern day standards, how that show is hard to watch. Like it's just like the same
Yeah,
animation over and over again. The soundtrack is
yeah.
fantastic, but the like that cool jazz score.
I'm like when I look at that stuff, 'cause I know people. There's like a tendency, you look back and you make fun of it,
Mm,
but I think I'm always struck by like, yeah, it's got a lot of shortcomings, but then I think like there's a lot that's still really solid
mm.
about that stuff. To me, it's interesting to look at.
Well,
Um,
I often equate it to because, like, for my generation growing up, you only had like for superhero movies when I was a kid, it was like nothing. Like there's the old Batman, like the Tim Burton Batman movies, the old Superman movies, and like a spattering of stuff if you could find it, like the Nick Fury, Hasselhoff movie or any of those sort of things. So like you kind of tend to romanticize like Blade or the ones that came out then because they're the first ones that kind of gave you some insight into the comics. You got to see live action, and I feel like it was kind of
so
like that.
now you're showing your age because for me it was those Tim Burton Batman movies
Yeah.
that kind of like was like, oh, this, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I was going from junior high to high school
Mm,
when that first Batman movie came out, and then different than the way it works now. Back then, it really did kind of have this impact.
mm,
It kind of gave a jolt of energy to the comic book
mhm.
industry. Where I mean, the success of the movies doesn't seem to quite have the same kind of like direct impact that we kind of all hoped it would. But
Like nowadays, you mean?
so yeah, yeah, like
Yeah.
when Blade came out and then Spider-Man came out, and every single time it was like, this is really going to help comics, the comic books. And then, I mean, maybe it did, but the impact wasn't quite the same as I feel like the energy of like the late 80s, early 90s was just a peak in comic
Mm,
book industry.
yeah. Well,
I mean, maybe one had nothing to do with the other, and it was just pop culture altogether.
no, I think they certainly related to one another. Like I talked to Mike Carlin on here, who was the editor of DC Comics when like the death of Superman happened, and we chatted about, I mean, all of that stuff and all the promotional insanity and like how a lot of what was going on with the Lois and Clark TV show was sort of reflected on what they could do in the comics and vice versa, and things like that as well. And I think there was a line, but I think nowadays it seems like they're very fluid. With Marvel especially, it seems like whenever they do something in the movies, it tends to reflect in the comics pretty quickly, albeit a costume change or a character that's a certain person or whatever version of this hero they're using tends to kind of, I know
Yeah,
Spider-Man 2099 got a new comic when like Into the Across Spider-Verse came out because he's sort of featured. So it does seem, whether it's like crazy successful or it's just let's throw this and see if it sticks, I'm not sure, but
yeah.
yeah.
And the multiverse of everything kind of just
Mm,
opens up. You can just do whatever you want now.
yeah.
I think.
It's kind of interesting that way because now that they're really leaning hard into that, like literally everything and anything is up for grabs. Like, bring back Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom now. That's up for grabs and it's fine. And I'm okay with it as long as it's a fine story. I'm very forgiving when it comes to whatever they do, as long as it is fun and it works, or I'm happy with it.
I have a hard time reacting 3 years in advance to whenever the movie's supposed to show
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah. That's fair. That's
I
fair
mean,
because the
everybody,
vitriol online is crazy.
yeah. It's I don't get it, but maybe I will when the movie comes out.
Yeah, but that's a very sane way to approach that, which I feel like most people don't do. It's an immediate gut
Yeah,
reaction to this is going to ruin everything and my childhood's done and I hate it and you suck and everything's going to suck. And it's like maybe you'll be surprised, maybe you'll like it, maybe give it time to breathe and
I
see what they're
I,
going to do.
I like I like everything just enough to enjoy it, but not enough to hate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very middling. I like that. That's good. Hey, I always say that. It's funny because it reminds me of something I say often is when someone says like, "Hey, you happy?" And I say, happy's fleeting. You can be really happy for like a few minutes. Content is what you should aim to be. Because if you're content, it's a straight line. You're good. happy, profound happiness, like profound sadness, is very short. It just tends to kind of overlay into something a little more sustainable. So that's a better way to
Yeah,
approach
I
this
have a
sort of fandom.
one of the guys in the studio here. Every time he comes in, he says he's like hyper positive, and he's like, "Hey, you having an amazing day?" And I always tell him, I'm like, I can't take that kind of pressure, man. Stop doing that.
That's really good. I used to work with a lady like that, and I would often
Yeah,
call her toxically positive because she would be like to the point that she could not accept anything negative. Like it would like literally ruin her day, or she would just fall apart if something like that she couldn't ignore or put a happy spin on would happen because it just like was deluding herself all the time that everything's happy positive, and then you just sort of don't
yeah,
have any sort of a barrier to protect yourself against when something sad happens or traumatic or anything like that. But yeah, those people are exhausting.
yeah. Stay in
Yeah,
middle of the road.
yeah, I like that.
Try to
That's
try to keep an even perspective.
awesome. So when you came to when you found those cartoons in what comic strips were you reading?
Just everything that was in the funnies page at the time was like Peanuts,
Hmm.
Garfield, Nancy, Ziggy, Dennis the Menace, um, Calvin and Hobbes,
Yeah, nice.
uh, and at some point I started to my brother and I started to like just remove the dialogue from the comic strips and the newspaper. Like you could just erase it. Newsprint would just come right off with an eraser,
Hmm.
and then we'd erase it and then rescript them to make each other laugh. And that's kind of like the unofficial start of my cartooning career.
Ah, that's really cool. I don't think I was
Yeah,
aware of that you could do that. I would always try to redraw them and kind of keep the same things, but then redo the panels. Uh, oh, that's really cool. So I assume you started drawing around that time period as well, or was that always something you had going?
yeah. So draw on and off. You have like little bursts of creativity here and there.
Hmm.
I, I can't say I ever sat down and like, oh, I drew hundreds of pages of comics when I was a little kid.
Hmm.
I didn't, but just every once in a while there'd be days where it's like, oh, you have this, just start drawing, and then I would kind of go through a cycle of having fun drawing and then getting frustrated with it and then giving up and thinking like, I don't have the talent to really see this through. So I didn't really concentrate or focus on it till I was in my early 20s.
Really?
Yeah.
What brought you to it then?
Well, at that point, I was in college, and the student-run newspaper had a comic section that they took submissions from students in, and so I thought, I think I could do something that's at least of this caliber. So it was just the the bar was so low. I thought I could do that,
Hmm.
and then I got addicted to that, like seeing my work published, and I wasn't really very successful in college as a student. And it just kind of like I was like, I'd rather just focus all my attention on this than doing who knows what that I'm not interested in.
What were you taking?
And I was taking a lot of math classes.
Hmm.
Um, I thought math was like going to be my route, but I was just like, this isn't fun. And look, why I don't want to work this hard to end up in a career where I have to work this hard
Hmm.
to do something I don't like.
Hmm.
So yeah, I turfed out completely
Well, did
once
you
I
have
was in
like a
college.
goal in mind that would have you pursue that, like an engineer or something, or do your parents want you to do that sort of thing, or how did you approach it? Is it just you thought you were good at math and that was?
Yeah, just math was like I had an aptitude for math, but
Hmm.
up until like you get to like calculus, like
Hmm.
everything was to me, it was just like that's a very easy puzzle for me to do. Then when you got to calculus, the puzzle became a lot more difficult,
Hmm.
and that's what college math is like calculus and beyond. And I was like, I kind of hung in there for a few years, but I was like, I don't like this, and I don't want to do this anymore.
I like that you put up with college so that you can do cartooning. You're like, I'll just keep doing the math while this allows me to do the cartooning side of things.
Well, so that was kind of my way out. Was
Hmm.
like, okay, maybe I could take a few art classes, and they didn't have a very strong art program, so I just loaded up on art class, and I stunk, but it was enough to graduate. And I got an internship at Marvel Comics while I was still in college, my last year of college. So that was really the big game changer for
Wow.
my life was getting to go there. And then suddenly it's like, yeah, I think this is what I want to do. So I kind of just clawed my way to stay and do as much as I could while I was there.
How did that come about, the internship?
Just discovering that they offered internships to students.
Hmm?
So I think there was an article in Wizard magazine
Ah, nice.
about it, and my brother pointed it out to me. He's like, "Hey, did you know there's internships? You got to go get this internship at Marvel, and then you'll get a job at Marvel, and then you'll be a cartoonist." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. That sounds like a wild prophecy, but he was 100% right. That's exactly what ended up happening."
Nostradamus.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, what was your first when you started interning? What did they have you doing? I'm always kind of curious about that route of getting into Marvel because, like, as someone on the outside of it and never seeing the inside, you hear people talk about it, and it seems kind of like whatever's going on behind the curtain in Oz. It's like where all the crazy stuff's going on, and you don't really know. But
Yeah.
the more you talk to people, the more you realize it's just a business like any other. But what did they have you doing when you were there?
Well, it was just grunt work.
Hmm?
And at that time, that was 1998.
Mm.
So the digital age hadn't completely taken over yet. Like they didn't even have. I think they had email in the office, but they didn't have like internet.
Oh,
They had, like they could, and they were just. I think at that time they were just starting the pre-production was digital at that point, but I think it was pretty new. Everybody had the computers
mm.
and the bullpen there. But so most of the work was still all of the work at that point. The artwork was mailed in from freelancers that didn't freelancers didn't work in the office, so
Mm.
they mail in the artwork. So my job was make a ton of photocopies of the artwork as it came in, and then put mail packages together and send them out to the different people in the creative chain. So like the letterers and the pencilers and the inkers and the colorists, they all needed to have copies of all the art for reference
Mm.
as they went through. So it's just a lot of that so that the editors and the assistant editors could just like actually take care of the creative side of putting the books together.
Man, I wonder how much when you talk about people before the digital age when that was like the way it was done. I mean, you're right up until I know probably mid 2000s. That's kind of how it seemed to go.
Yeah.
Just the amount of like artwork that was just shipped across the country, like for all the comics coming out and just like FedExing pages left and right all over the place. It must have been wild. I'm surprised
So
like you
it
don't
was
hear stories about books getting lost because the art, no, I've never heard someone tell a story about that where like an entire book got lost because the art got stuck somewhere.
I don't know. I mean, that had to have happened, but I
Yeah.
mean, the stories I would always hear is like art going missing because somebody stole it or whatever.
Yeah, that
But
makes sense.
and maybe I think maybe I was hearing stories about interns in years prior to me, like making off with pages and
Mm.
selling them because that's still like uh, early mid '90s
Hmm.
artwork we're talking about.
Oh
Like
yeah.
can you imagine like handling the pages from Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane as they're coming into the office? But that was a really cool part of the internship was like suddenly every day I'm holding original art pages from these awesome top tier Marvel Comics artists, and it just looking at that, just looking at the physical pages, they're much larger. Like I didn't
Mm.
know that they were like 11 by 17, and so that was a really cool aspect of it. And then sometimes creators would come in, and you get to actually meet writers and pencilers here and there. I remember Klaus Janson
Oh
was
wow.
working on an issue of What If that he wrote. He wrote it and drew it. So I got to meet him, which was awesome, and he was very encouraging for artwork. He's a teacher. I think he was teaching at SVA at the time. He might still teach at SVA.
Really? Wow.
So so he was just like went into like encouraging teacher mode. Like, okay, you need to think about this. You need to think about that. Don't draw with these crappy markers. Um, so it was a really great time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love looking at I have
Yeah,
quite a collection of those uh the art editions. The big tall ones that like have the fold. They're not in here, they're
yeah,
in
yeah,
another room in the house, but they and I love
yeah,
looking at those, just looking at all the fixes, like where they use the whiteout and where they go over or the notes they make in the
yeah,
margins. Like it's you lose a lot of that. It's so cool that they got into that as a thing to release those, because if you're sort of an art
yeah,
person, it gives you so much more insight into the process and stuff like that. It's super cool. That's
yeah,
awesome. Well, how did
yeah.
you?
Agreed. Yeah, we have a stack of those books here
Oh yeah,
in
awesome.
the
Yeah.
studio. Yeah, because everybody loves them.
I've got so it's come to the point now that if I find one that's like even partially on sale because they're so expensive, I just grab it because it's like you never find them for that cheap that often, especially the big ones. But I
Yeah,
have a lot of the ones that I would have really wanted now, but still, you never like anybody
I
that's like
always
an
look at
art
it
guy.
as yeah. I just look at it as like the price of this book is still less than one page of the original art would cost. So the
Oh,
value of that is just
why'd you have to tell me that?
unbelievable.
Now I'm going to buy way more of them. Now that's going to be my justification. I'll be like, no, Chris
You
was
have to.
right. Yeah.
You have to.
I remember I was at a con one time, convention I said Nova Scotia. So in New Brunswick, right, the province beside us, they have this con that Nick Bradshaw usually is involved with called East Coast Comic Expo. And he one year there's some guy going out of business that had a comic shop and he was selling a bunch of those for like super cheap. And I bought a bunch of them, but then there was like one that I was like, I'm gonna see how well I do because I was selling art, just prints I do and stuff. And I was like, and then I'm like, I'm gonna come back for this Sal Buscema Silver Surfer one. And then of course when I went back, it was gone, and it was like the ultimate, like almost had it. I eventually got it years later, but I really regretted not grabbing that one when I had the chance at the time. So you're right, you got to grab when you can.
Yeah.
Um, so how did you get into doing to actually getting to create comics from the internship?
Well, I interned in the office that were putting the What If comic together,
Hmm.
and the editor at that time was Kelly Corvasi.
Hmm.
And whenever I'd just be sitting in the office, like hanging out, I would just doodle, gags and jokes. And he said, you know what, if you turn this into a strip, I'll put it in the letters page. So he gave me a spot. So that was the first, published Marvel work I did. Then a year later, I actually got a job in the production department. So I went from internship to the internship went well enough that they hired me. So,
Nice.
and then I was like on staff, and it's at one point, one of my friends, Greg Schiegel, was an assistant editor, suggested to Zena Sarfin, editor of the Bullpen Bulletins page,
Hmm.
among her other duties, she got put in charge of that. And he said, "Hey, well, why don't you have Chris do a comic strip and put it in there?" And she said, "Yeah, okay." That and then it's like 25% less that I have to fill the rest of the page
Hmm.
with. It was just I just really lucked out and got fell ass backwards into being at the right place at the right time and just getting a golden opportunity like that. So, because when I look at that stuff now, I think, oh my God, I can't believe that they ever let me do this. It took me a while to catch up and improve. But that's how it started, and that strip eventually became the mini Marvels. It was called Bullpen Bulletins,
No, yeah,
Bullpen
I
Bits,
remember.
because when
I
that
remember.
bullpen,
Yeah,
yeah. So that's
yeah,
that's how it all started. Yeah,
yeah. That was. I remember when I noticed those starting to show up in some of the letter columns. It was always a fun little addition. It reminded me a lot of, and I don't know. I assume you might have some kind of a reverence for him, but like Hembeck and a lot of his old stuff.
loved
Uh,
Handback.
yeah.
When I was a kid, when I was 11, 12, like actually buying, like I kind of made the graduation from like newspaper humor funnies page comics to buying superhero comics.
Hmm.
And he had like a regular feature in the Marvel Age comic,
Hmm.
with Marvel's like promotional, and he always had like the middle, like the double page spread in the middle of the book was like a giant comic strip from him, and I'm like, he's doing both of the things I love about comics. He's doing humor and he's doing the superhero. So like he had a huge influence on me. I loved his stuff, and got wound up getting to do the same thing essentially. So yeah,
Yeah,
for
that's
sure, he
awesome.
was a big influence. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, him and like geez, I'm blanking on the name here, but though like that sort of vibe in like the old What the comics, I used to dig those a lot when I was growing up as well, because they had a lot of those funny little
Yeah.
gags in them, that were just fun playing in the margins. And I mean, Spider Ham did a bit of that too before it kind of became what it is now. But that
Uh-huh.
was always really fun stuff. That's awesome. So did you get, like you mentioned, the art came along as the years went on? Did you get to like pick the brain of other artists around that much, or is it just you're trying to grow on your own as you were going?
Um, it's all that,
Hmm.
it's a combination of everything. Just experience. My friends that also drew, like, hey, what are you using? What are you drawing on? What are you drawing with? Um, I remember, yeah, some of the guys were really pushing on me, like, you really need to, like, I was using just like the crow quill pens
Hmm.
I was inking with, because I was trying to like use like real ink, and then some of the other guys were like, you really should be using a brush for that kind of like your style demands that you use a brush. So I jumped to using a brush, and then that kind of opened up a um, whole new level of craftsmanship, I guess.
Hmm.
But it's just putting in the work, like just drawing over and over and over. You eventually just improve. Like your handwriting kind of starts to become more and more your own style of handwriting.
Mm.
That's what I tell kids when I go to on school visits. I'm like, well, they're like, how do you draw so good? And you just have to get used to it. Your handwriting isn't as good as it was 2 years ago. It's much better now. That's how drawing is the same way.
Yeah, put in the reps. Have you
Yeah, yeah.
stuck with the traditional style, or have you moved on to the digital with your process?
Yeah, I've embraced digital 100%.
Yeah,
The last couple of books I did, Officer Clawson is the last book I drew.
that's awesome.
And this, yeah, I did. It's 240 pages, and the whole thing is, I did on my iPad,
Yeah.
and it's just so much faster.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. It's insane how much time you
No,
can save.
yeah, no erasing pencils, no scanning, because you draw it and it's ready to go. Um, yeah, it's just such a time saver. So my speed just really picked up. So
Like,
now there's like a little bit of a learning curve in the beginning. I'm like, I don't know if I can get used to it. And now when I have to do actual sketches for sale for paper, I'm like, paper, it's so hard. I don't know how to do this. It's a reverse learning curve now.
yeah, that's really funny. I always credit, I think it was at that East Coast Comic Expo, I watched Adam Gorham, who Canadian guy that does some comic work. I think he works on the Darth Vader comics right now. He's doing some Godzilla stuff, Marvel Godzilla crossovers or something. But I was watching him draw with one. He did some like sketch covers for I think it was like the Turtles meet Stranger Things or something. He was doing some covers for them, and I was watching him draw, color, everything at once when I was standing and talking to him, because I had him on the show before. And man, oh man, I was just like, this is insane. Like this has saved so much time. So much time. Like, even I used to do a lot of
Yeah.
convention sketches, and now I'm like, I'll just send you a digital copy of it, and I'll just do it of people, and take the picture, do the thing, email it to them. It's just simpler. Most people just want stuff they can post on, social media anyway. It's not like or print
Uh,
and put in their
people
home.
people will pay for a
Yeah,
digital
yeah. What I do
commission.
at cons is I normally just draw, like I'll draw people in their costumes. So like cosplayers will come, I'll draw them in their costume, like do a really nice sort of thing, and then email it off to them. And often that's yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, an
That
option for
that
you.
all right.
Yeah, I get
I
that
hadn't heard
that
of that. I hadn't. Yeah.
well, it's tailored for them, right? Because I'm drawing them in their
Yeah.
costume.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm
That
drawing,
makes
if I
sense.
was
Yeah.
doing an original art piece of Spider-Man or something, no, I totally get that they would want it digitally. And I do original ones too, but just for that style of giving people a picture of themselves in their con costumes. Yeah, it's the first time I tried it was this past year, just because it was like the color to do everything. It's so much easier. You just draw it right there, throw some color in it, and then mail off
Yeah.
to them, and they're happy. And
Do you use iPad? Do you use a
yep,
Cintiq
yeah,
or
iPad. I used to have
iPad?
a little bamboo thing I started trying to work with, but then I was like, I'm just going to try the iPad Pro and do the uh Procreate and all that stuff. And yeah,
Procreate.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've really taken to it. And in fact, I used to do my own little mini comics years ago, and I'm kind of missing it a lot. And I really want to get back to it. So I plan on working on doing it all that way because it's just so much faster now. It's so much faster. You're right. But
Yeah.
do you find it's hard? Like, I guess a revenue stream for a lot of people is selling the artwork. Like, do you miss that aspect of it, or does it not really affect you too much?
Um, well, for something like this, right,
Hmm.
Officer Clawsome,
Hmm.
the, outside of like Marvel or DC Comics, I don't really think there's a market for original artwork.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I guess
You know,
like there's not a lot of kids clamoring to get original Captain Underpants, art or anything like that because they don't,
yeah,
it's like just a book they
and
have. But
yeah, and my original Marvel stuff, um, I I haven't really sold much of it because I don't really think I can't really get the money that
mm,
it would take for me to part with it. It's the money people want to spend on that is kind of on it's comparable to just doing a commission.
mm,
And a commission is like usually like one or two characters. It's a lot easier and faster to do than a full page
mm.
with lettering and panels. So yeah, most of my original art that I sell is just commission work. It's the yeah, unless I could start getting like a lot more money for the originals.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Like I wonder about that because certain artists like are more precious than others about their stuff. Like I remember going to I don't want to name the guys, don't want to give him trouble, but I doubt it would matter now. It was a long time ago. But I remember I went by a con by um, a comic artist from Marvel's table, and I was reading the book that he was doing, and he had a bunch of pages just sitting on. They weren't like in a big thing; they were just sitting there in a stack to go through to buy. And I was flipping through one of them. It was kind of dog-eared and a little whatever, but I was like, "This is." I looked at it and I said, "This episode had like this issue hasn't come out yet." And he looked at me and he goes, "Shh," like that. And he's like, like it was already off to the printer and gone. But he was selling the art before the issue had come out, and I was like, "Well, that's obviously he's not super reverential about it. He's just happy to get it, make his money and go about his day."
Well, I also like I watch a lot of Todd McFarlane interviews.
Hmm.
Have you seen any?
No, no,
And
not
he's
lately.
talking about like he was talking about like some page, Spider-Man page that he'd sold for $80, in the '90s or the '80s at some point.
Hmm.
And now that's maybe tens of thousands of dollars for
Oh
that
yeah.
page that he's. So there's always that sort of thing in the back of my mind too. I did sell one time. I sold a cover of I think a Deadpool variant.
Hmm.
It was maybe it was like Avengers Heroic Age or something. Like I sold, and it was just all it was just Deadpool standing there with a couple of guns. It was like, so I ended up selling that because I hadn't put that much effort into it, and I was like, I don't care. Maybe sold it for $100 or $150 or something, and then I saw it on eBay or somewhere. Somebody sent me a link that it was like somebody that guy then resold it for like $3,000,
Hmm. Yeah.
and
That's a kick in the pants
so
there.
I'm like, if people want to pay me $3,000 for my originals, then we can talk.
Yeah. Well, there's an option for it if the guy sold it, absolutely. But yeah, that's the thing too. Like I notice. I don't think. I mean, you have to understand that that's the way some people do it. I guess you can't get too upset about it. But like, I'll go. I have some sketches up on the wall there of from different people I know that people have given me as gifts, or like Nick Bradshaw. There's a George Perez Superman that a friend got for me at a con years ago. Like Darwin Cook did a Spider-Man for me. He used to live in Nova Scotia before he passed away. Like and you get them, and sometimes you go to those conventions and you see someone beside you that's getting a sketch from someone, and it's like a thing that they were doing for free for a comic, like free comic day or something, and then they're online for thousands of dollars like right after, and it's like the guy took time out of his day to like make something for you, and then it's really purely a financial thing for some people, and it's kind of sad.
Well, if I'm going into it selling something, I know that like it's anything that happens after this is fair
Yeah,
game.
yeah,
And it's
fair
just the
enough.
market. It's just the art market. That's how it's always been. I just was kind of surprised at the amount of money that page was able to get.
Mm,
And I think it's because it was a cover versus an interior page. Because nobody's offered me that kind of money for an interior page.
mm,
And it was, Deadpool, maybe at the time it was the movie had come out. I don't know. There's all the variables. Who knows what it is?
Yeah, well, that's cool. So yeah, eventually the comic strip, I guess, led into the mini Marvel stuff you'd done, the ongoing, like the various books.
Yeah, a couple of one shots, and then various strips, and then collected editions. And it recently came out with a collected edition earlier this year. I think there's going to be a second volume. They split like the previous giant collection. They split it into two books,
Hmm.
um, which I'm happy to see that they're still pushing it. You know, and now, yeah, last month, Venomverse Reborn #2. They gave me a 3-page strip,
Mhm.
and that. And it's been a long time since I've done any work for them. And then they offered me that and some Venom variant covers also for Venom War, which the first issue hit last week.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, it's like the amount of work I've gotten from Marvel over the years has been relatively sparse, but right now I'm in the middle of some Venom stuff, so that's pretty cool. I'm always happy for the opportunity.
Yeah. Do you have like a preference when it comes to like what heroes you work on? Or are you just happy to do whatever?
Uh, anything they want to let me touch,
Nice.
I'm happy to do something with it. They're all fun toys to play with.
Yeah. Is there like a community amongst people that are kind of do something like in a more in a cartoonish sort of way, like you or Scotty Young or those sort of guys? Like, do you guys have a community of sorts, or is it just you're all just sort of every artist on their own sort of
We
thing?
Well, we end up meeting each
Yeah.
other at conventions and things, and so far, I'm happy to say that like, I like all those guys. Like
Yeah.
I love Scotty Young, Chris Iliopoulos, Art Baltazar, Franco.
Yeah.
Um, and actually did a project with Art and Franco called Encounter.
Hmm.
It was published by Lion Forge at some point.
Nice.
So it's nice to meet these guys and become friends. Because like when I was growing up, it was like in the '90s, especially, it was the days of like jealous feuds among the top tier
Yeah.
professionals. And like, oh, these guys are feuding over this or whatever. And I was like, and I always found it like, why I don't understand why these guys don't get along. They're all doing the same thing.
Hmm.
Um, and when Tiny Titans first came out, like I was feeling a lot of resentment on my behalf that these guys, Art and Franco, are doing this thing over at DC Comics that was similar to a strip that I used to do at Marvel Comics
Hmm.
because they were like and everyone was like, oh, they're totally ripping you up, and I'm like, no, they're not. They're like, and so I didn't respond to that influence at all. I just thought like, and I'd known them, like I'd already knew of them, and I
Hmm.
knew that they were really good. I was like, and I saw that there might be a benefit of like, well, if these guys can be successful over at DC with the Tiny Titans, like maybe some more Marvel work will come back my way, and that did end up happening.
Yeah.
And
Like
yeah,
the
and then
oh, go ahead.
yeah, I ended up sitting next to them at a convention because they put
Yeah.
all like the kids people together, and
Yeah.
just like over the weekend, because I just fell in love with them. So
That's awesome. Well,
um,
like it's
yeah, so far I've got all good experiences.
a rising tide floats all ships, as they say, right?
Yeah.
That yeah, no, well, that's I guess that was the other question, and well, we'll get to, but like obviously your focus being on stuff that's more kid centric, is that always have you just found yourself gravitating towards that style of writing? Is there a reason why you appreciate that, or it just lends itself to your art style, or is it you just never had an interest in trying to go in the more serious route?
Um, yeah, I feel like well, mostly it's because of just the style, and
Mm,
that's just what the readers kind of just responded to.
mm,
Overwhelmingly, the response was, "This is great for kids." Like they'd
yeah.
say, "This is so funny," and then "This is great for kids," which I was still in the mindset of newspaper comic strips
Yeah.
and funnies, which in my day, as for everybody read them.
Yeah.
Adults would read newspaper comic strips. But I guess by early 2000s, it was just when people would see that, it's different than the material in the main stories of the books, and everybody just kind of decided this is for kids. So I didn't really see any reason to push back on it, because when I was reading comics when I was a kid, all the comics were for everyone of all ages. Like the adult stuff, like the sophisticated Spider-Man stories were also for children.
Yes, 100%.
Which, but everything, the demographics of everything is always changing. But yeah, I just leaned in. I was like, okay, if you say so, sure, I'll go with it all the way. I don't like. I want to draw stuff that I want to draw stuff for the 10-year-old me, basically. And when I think about trying to do something like more serious, I just feel like there's a certain level that I'm like, I don't know if I'm wired to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I was curious about that because like that is interesting what you said about how they were all designed for kids back in the day, and I feel like that's something people often forget when it comes to these properties that they sort of love. When George Lucas is like when everybody gets mad at him about Star Wars stuff, he's like, look, I made this stuff for kids, and then like when they don't like the episode 1 or something, and it's like, it's just, this is what I made for the kids of that generation. But it's people have this, it was weird because back then they would kind of throw in things like the death of Gwen Stacy and stuff that obviously were heavy. But at the end of the day, the Spider-Man still triumphs over evil, and the book went on.
I think that's a big part of it, is comics fandom has struggled so hard to be, just they just want to emphasize that comics, they're serious. This is serious stuff.
Yeah.
So the second I come along with my fun stuff, they go, oh, it's fun. Fun's for kids.
Yeah.
This isn't real comics. This is kid stuff because it's fun. Like it's not cool for adults to have fun or enjoy themselves. Like the Deadpool movie. It just came out, Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah.
It's rated R.
Yeah.
It was fun though. Like that movie's successful because it's fun. I don't know that it's successful necessarily because it's rated R. I think it's more because it was fun, a fun time.
Yeah. Yeah. I have an X-Men podcast to do with a friend where we watched the cartoon from the 90s, and we did the new series and stuff. And we often have guests on it. And actually a friend of mine who works for Marvel now, David Cutler, that I was an old roommate of mine. He summed it up really well. He said that my parents could probably figure out cold fusion easier than they could explain what's going on in this movie or understand, because you would have to have seen every Marvel thing, read a bunch of comics, known a bunch of reference points you'd never know. But like, I watched the movie with my wife, who does not know any of that stuff, and she enjoyed it and laughed because it was fun. Like, fun can carry you through. It can be, not every, and I love artsy, heady movies. Like, we can go watch Truffaut. That's great. But, every once in a while it's fun just to watch a great fun movie. And that's what it was. It was almost refreshing in a way to get like a decent fun little movie, that wasn't too up its own.
I feel like you could, I feel like with movies, you're still allowed that latitude.
Yeah.
But comics, I don't know. It seems like, if you're doing something fun, or if you think you're being funny, I don't know. We got to take this stuff seriously because we want everyone to take us seriously as readers.
Yeah. Well, comics has struggled for years to be taken as legitimate art, and I feel like it has in some ways. You get your Watchmen's and whatever, but I think there's still some people hung up on that crusade that never really put that sword down. Yeah.
Well, that was another thing, was that I often found myself saying that comics spent so long saying comics aren't just for kids anymore. They're not just for kids anymore. That at a certain point it became like, nobody thinks they're for kids. They're for creepy adults. We all know that. I wouldn't let my kid anywhere near a comic book.
It's a good point. It was like, and now like, it seems like there's a real disconnect that there's the comics for the creepy people, but then also like it's almost like there's a divide now between that and like like the amulet books or the bone books now somehow got put into that list, or like the Scholastic sized versions of those sort of comic books.
It's an entire parallel universe of comics that
Yeah.
the main that Marvel and DC comics industry is completely unaware of.
Mm. Yeah.
But yeah, that's what that's where you can find this in bookstores.
Yeah.
Where kids are buying their comics.
Yeah, exactly. Do you are you a fan of Chris Ware? Like, because he would take, like, he's kind of the antithesis of that, where it's like the cartoony look, but with a super serious, depressing sort of adult story.
Yeah, I've read one of his books. He's amazing
Yeah.
for sure. I read one of his books, but yeah, I don't think kids.
Oh God,
I
no,
don't
no,
know
it's
the kids are going to
definitely
enjoy
not for
themselves reading that.
kids. But that's an interesting, just as an exercise in graphic design stuff, I find it interesting because like it doesn't really. I think those books and like books like yours and a lot of other people that do this sort of stuff as well really illustrate how any style can fit into whatever you want to fit into as long as you're creative with it. Like that he does. You can really play with the medium and do something really interesting. Um, by not by kind of playing with that perception that just because it's I don't want to use the word simpler because it seems like it's insulting, but like a cartoonish style is, you can still do those sort of things and really hit.
I think one of the keys about that, simpler or cartoonier artwork is the clarity level.
Yes.
And when you can you can instantly see and decode what's happening. I think that's a reason why people want to like push that, like, oh, this is more for kids because
Yeah.
they're like, oh, that's going to be easy for them to decipher. Which, I mean, all artwork should be easy to look at.
Good point. Yeah. And even the ones that are like, messy or have a style, like I'm trying to think of like Sienkiewicz or someone like that, where it's like a way other side. It's really gritty and dark and stuff. You still like,
It's very complicated, but it's very easy to see what he's drawing.
Yes.
You're not sitting there stuck going like, I don't understand what you drew here.
Yeah.
Which, sometimes that can happen with other artists.
Yes.
But he's we're talking about a master. So
yeah. Yes, I agree. I mean, I just use him as examples, and that's wildly different from a cartoonish style. But you look at Arkham Asylum or something, and like every face, every expression is very noticeable. Like it's you get it. Well, I think that brings us to G-Man. Like, so where did that come from? Where was the inspiration for that?
I met Eric Larson, and
a great guy. I've had him on the show. He's awesome, fantastic.
He's my favorite. At that point, he had been was my favorite comic book artist with Savage Dragon. I completely missed the boat on his Spider-Man runs. I didn't know about him until Image launched, and then there's this new wave of books, and that quickly became my favorite book. And when I met him, the mini Marvels had already been going for like a year or so, and he reacted with positively to that, and ended up leading to. And he's always had like backup features in the Savage Dragon books. He did Desperate Times. Chris Eliopoulos had a strip in the back. Chris Eliopoulos was his letterer for decades, I want to say. maybe not that long. But he's always like up for filling up the back pages with extra material. So I ended up talking to him about like, well, what if I did something like mini Marvels but different? He said, yeah, whatever, give me a page. So that's how G-Man started.
Nice. Oh, I didn't realize that it started in a Savage Dragon book. I thought it was okay, interesting. That's very cool.
Where did you think it came from?
I just
out of curiosity.
I honestly didn't. I just assumed it was like anything. You got a contract to do your own book and put it out there, and that's just where it came from. Like it was something that's rattling around in your head for years.
I mean, it kind of.
Well, I guess it would have been, but
it was kind of like I was kind of just ready to go right away. I had all the characters worked out because they're all based on me and my friends. Like I did that whole like self-involved, like like as a reader for many, many years, I was just like imagined, but this was the first time I had a chance to like put, like I had sketches and stuff over the years or whatever. And this is actually was the opportunity to go like, well, people expect the little kid stuff for me. So I took the characters that I had already come up with in my head or on sketchbooks. I was like, well, I'll just do the mini treatment to them, and then I kind of turned into what it became.
Oh, that's cool. That's
And
really
it went for
awesome.
a couple of years, and then he encouraged. He's like, well, you should do a one shot, collect all this stuff, and it just kept going. Uh, so that was that.
That's awesome. Was there ever was there ever a disconnect with Marvel? You mentioned you've done much with them over the in a while, or is it just went your own way, doing your own thing? Phone
No,
stopped ringing.
yeah, more so that
Mm,
it was like, yeah, I'm here anytime you want to do stuff, and then you know, uh, uh, it was just more a case of maybe I don't know,
mhm. Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. Then Scotty Young came along and blew the doors off of the whole thing, and I'm like, well, okay, he's their guy now, so
I see.
I guess there's not really a lot of which he 100% deserves.
Hmm.
He's awesome. Am I jealous? Of course, but
Well, I appreciate the honesty.
he deserves everything. Well, he
Yeah,
deserves everything he's getting though.
yeah.
You
I
know.
mean, I feel like it's easy to get into a trap of blaming everyone else for, you know what I mean? You kind of got to focus on your own thing,
Well,
and it's pretty
so
far to.
so that's yeah, that's the thing about jealousy is like I think it's fine. Like it's natural to want what other people have,
Mhm.
or they're be jealous of their success. But the problem is when you don't recognize what's happening and you try to like um disparage them for reasons completely unrelated to like what's really happening.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Well,
he's awesome. He's talented. He's super nice. Like I got nothing. He had nothing but pleasant interactions with him.
nice. So the newest book out is the Officer Clawsome. Is that your newest one?
Well, Officer Clawsome is 2 volumes. What did I just do?
No, you're good.
Still there?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, 2 volumes are both out right now,
Awesome.
out there in stores. Check Amazon or wherever you buy your books. Um, and yeah,
Very cool. And I
I
know
can't
there's
remember what you.
oh no, just whatever the newest projects you have out right now are out in the market. That's the
Yeah,
one.
that's the newest thing, and then the Venom first Venom War #1 variant cover just hit this past
Awesome.
week.
It's got to be kind of interesting and fun to because when they give you those books, or those concepts, you get to sort of take these big serious Marvel stories and kind of get to make a kid's version of them, which I think must be kind of fun to play with that. I feel like there'd be a lot of obviously when people are getting murdered and all this stuff, you got to pare that stuff down. But the idea of that just always sounds really fun to me. Like you have such a huge box to play with and just be take Civil War and make it and kidify it, like
Right.
that's got to be a really fun sort of exercise.
Yeah, it's and it's also really fun when they're like given that do Civil War, do World War Hulk, or
Mhm.
do Thor's Return. And then that because then there's like a degree of focus, and I'm like, okay, I know exactly what the assignment is, and what to do. Um, yes, it's fun.
That's awesome. Oh well,
I'm rambling off
no,
now.
it's
I'm
all
totally
good.
trailing off.
Well, the other thing I wanted to ask you about was I see you have this hashtag danger thing out as well. Um, is that because it doesn't? I haven't got a chance to look at it. I literally just came across it and I was doing a little bit of research before I talked to
So
you.
that is decidedly not for kids.
Yes.
Speaking of what's for kids and what isn't, and styles and everything,
Yeah.
like for years that'd be, yeah, ever think about doing something that's not just for kids? Well, hashtag danger is not for kids. It's still very funny and fun, but it's
Mhm.
adults only. It's bad language and um, cartoonish violence sort of thing. Tom
Awesome.
Peyer is the writer,
Yeah.
and I really love his sense of humor. At Ahoy Comics,
Hmm. Oh yes. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, and I came across that one. I thought
uh,
this looks wildly different from the other things that he was working on. So I thought it was kind of an outlier in some of your
yeah.
work.
Tom Peyer's kind of like my hometown hero because he was he's also from Syracuse, and he used to always be in the comic shop that I went to when I was a little kid.
Mm.
I didn't realize it, but my brother was telling me, he's like, yeah, he used to always be there. Him and they'd be hanging out, talking, or whatever, and he did all this stuff in the Syracuse newspaper. And he did, yeah. So they founded Ahoy Comics there in Syracuse, and they reached out to me. He's like, hey, I got this idea for this thing. It reminds me a lot of Venture Brothers, hashtag
Nice. That's awesome.
That style. So it's just to give you the short pitch, it's like it's kind of like that sort of a sensibility, which is also not for kids.
Yeah, no, God, no. Do you have anything that you're working on now you can discuss, or is it all sort of ethereal?
Just the Venom stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
awesome.
I keep. I think I have the artwork here. Some of it. And here's
Oh, that's beautiful.
one of the variant covers.
Yeah, those are awesome.
And they're the version. Jordan White's the editor, and he said, "Yeah, I want you to just like he's seen me do many Marvel cover recreations before.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, so I want to do that. So, but I'll give you the main cover by Iban Coelho.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm saying that right. And that guy's awesome. So it's been really cool to just get to do this and
Oh, that's gorgeous.
have it on I'm always I'm always happy to get an opportunity with Marvel. So
Oh, that's awesome.
That's what I've been doing lately.
Oh, very cool. Well, yeah, I very much look forward to seeing that on the shelf. I'll be definitely checking out my local comic store. But thanks so much for being on the show, Chris. It was much appreciated. This is a great chat.
Thanks for inviting me.
Oh yeah, anytime. Let me know if you have any other projects coming out or anything you want to promote. But I'm looking forward to what's next. Awesome.
All right.
Thanks again. There it is, my chat with Chris Giarrusso. Very fun conversation. Very cool guy. Very quiet guy, but very fun guy. But a lot of interesting information about how he got into comics, about how he arrived in the cartooning world, about his take on a lot of different things, and really enjoyed that. Thanks to guest acquisition officer Davin for getting Chris on the show, and for all his work as well. I know, me and him are together on the X-Rated X-Men Animated Review Show podcast. Which if you're not tuning in, you should. It's a ton of fun. And get all up in there. It's a lot of fun. We can watch me and Davin endlessly debate about why it's not that important that movie Wolverine's not 5'4". The debate rages on and she'll never end, I don't think, until one of us dies. But it's a great conversation, great show over there. And if you like X-Men, if you like the X-Men cartoons, we get into it. We really do, and it's always a blast. So tune into that. Anywho, I'm going to go get some stuff ready. Got a busy schedule as always. So thanks for tuning in. Join us next week when we have another feature conversation. Just getting the iron in the fire worked out for who that's going to be. Don't like to announce it until I have it in the can. So not quite yet, but it'll be there. Thank you very much for tuning in. And stay safe, have fun, go read some comics, and read a book too. You don't read enough books. The Graphic Histories Podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.